Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato, and we're coming to you here to break down the all-22 offensive film of the Giants' Week 9 loss to the Washington Commanders. I come out of this one pleasantly surprised after watching the tape, Nick, and I'll say this, after the first half, I was concerned. I thought maybe we were going back to the Garrett Judge ways of unwatchable tape that you and I somehow slogged through, by the way. I think back to that, like doing film reviews on an offense that just isn't even attempting to throw the ball is as painful as it gets for an analyst. In my mind, at least, I am a pro quarterback, pro passing kind of guy. I like to watch the passing game. I respect the run game. I like a run game, but I like a passing game. But, I was happy to see it because in the second half, the Giants threw the ball and they threw the ball well and they found opportunities and there were plays where they used the run game to set up the pass. And I think we want to start here with the key takeaway that we've seen discussed on Giants Twitter that both you and I feel pretty strongly about on the other side after watching the tape. And that is that we don't blame Brian Daboll or the play calling or Daniel Jones for the 0 passing yards at halftime. We don't blame anyone, really. We assess it to football, to X's and O's. Because when you watch the tape and you see what Washington did to try and stop the Giants in the first half before they made some adjustments in the second half, they were inviting the run more than any team has ever invited the run. And sometimes when a defense invites the run by playing too high safeties or by not only playing too high safeties, but having a safety shaded all the way over the top of Malik Nabers to the point where it's like taking him out of the run play, essentially, you can see teams not have success running the ball, but the Giants did have success running the ball into these looks because they blocked up front and they were on point with the timing of their run game. So it's hard for me to sit here and blame Daboll or blame Jones when what they were doing was working and when what they were doing was what was invited to them. It's why you see the Chiefs run the ball a lot because they're inviting the run. And so I thought the Giants did a good job in the first half. And we'll talk about the second half too, but that was probably my two main takeaways. One, I don't blame them. And two, my God, I haven't seen a defensive coordinator pay this much attention to Malik Nabers in a game this entire season. This was the most Malik Nabers focused game plan I've seen. They were trying to take him away.
Nabers was very popular in this one.
Yeah.
And the Giants just said, okay, you want to remove our number one passing threat. We're going to run the football. Because pre-snap, it seemed like Washington was in a too high shell almost every single time. And they would rotate strong, they would rotate weak, but that rotating defender down into the box would be a little bit late. And that would give the Giants a little bit of an advantage. And with a running back as quick and decisive as Tyrone Tracy Jr. and Devin Singletary, you can take advantage of the defense if they're wanting to play that way, if they want to remove a Malik Nabers from the game plan, which they attempted to do. So I have no qualms with what Brian Daboll rolled out there. I know a lot of people are talking about, oh, it's because they don't trust Daniel Jones and all that crap. Like, look, I have my gripes with Daniel Jones. I've been talking about it for years. Daniel Jones played fine in this game, in my opinion. And Daniel Jones, it wasn't a lack of confidence in Daniel Jones in the first half. That's not why they went that way. It was just what the defense was presenting them. And I think a good coach, and I have my gripes with Daboll, don't get me wrong, but I think a good coach takes advantage of what the defense provides them and what the defense is giving them, especially if it's successful. And they were ripping off like 7-yard rushes, 24-yard rushes on that zone read to Daniel Jones, a 16, a 10. They ran five on that second drive. They ran five runs in a row.
Yeah.
And then they did the play action screen that ended up being the fumble that was recovered and quickly turned into a touchdown by Washington. And that was a good screen call. It's just Chris Hubbard took a step to the inside and got beat high side. And look, man, Chris Hubbard, I felt like he had a couple good reps in the run game. We'll talk about the offensive line a little bit later. But when you do have that type of player as your left tackle, you got to be cognizant of that. And the Giants just weren't, and the timing was all mixed up. Look, earlier in the year, we praised the Giants for their timing and their ability to execute screens. Well, now Andrew Thomas isn't there. These pieces haven't worked together through training camp. You have a guy you just signed off the 49ers practice squad. You put him in there, and the timing's going to get thrown off because I think that could have been a huge play. That could have been a huge play if Jones was just able to get the football to Tyrone Tracy Jr., but Chris Hubbard got beat.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And ultimately, I think the Giants figured out some things in the second half as ways to beat the Washington Commanders in the passing game, which we're going to talk about. This was, I thought, a very good game for Daniel Jones for what he is as a quarterback. And he played very well in this game, which we're going to get to. But it takes me to my second big takeaway. And this one's less so about the game, though it was about the game. And it's more so about me looking forward already, Nick, toward 2025 and beyond 2025 and what we need to be focused on as a, in my mind, fan base, because I hate to say it, but it's the truth. The Giants are 2-7. They basically have to win out to make the playoffs. The playoffs are over. This season is not the focus. And that is the offensive line, specifically the pass protection, Nick, because there's been so many countless times in the past where Andrew Thomas has went down and it's been just an abject and absolute disaster in pass protection to the point where they just every play is a breakdown and four-man, four-man rushes, five-man pass protections, four-man rushes with seven-man pass protections. We've seen offensive lines, immediate breakdowns. And I'll say this, Nick, and we could run this now if you want to, or we can keep talking it through. I put together a little cut up of some of the plays in pass protection and just some of the looks at some of the pockets. A lot of these plays were on two plays were on 3rd and 9 or longer. Some of these plays were with just 5-man pass protections. Some of these plays are on 3 and 5, 7-step drops, like with some deep concepts, some intermediate concepts. And there is just really good technique up front by the Giants offensive line and really good and clean pockets for the Giants to run some vertical and intermediate concepts in this game. Now, there are some really bad reps from Jermaine Illuminor and from Chris Hubbard. And those will get circled around Twitter and those will get cycled around. But when it's 2 or 3 reps, that doesn't define a whole story. In this game, I thought the Giants pass protection gave them a really good opportunity to make some of these big plays. And they did a really good job up front, with the exception of those really bad plays that stand out. And that's just not something I'm used to. You know, Nick, in the past, when these injuries have happened, it's been just a disaster. The Flowers heart years, again, just a disaster. And I think there's a good step forward with the Giants offensive line this year. I was worried, honestly, after the Eagles game. I was a little bit worried after the Steelers game. I feel like they've settled in a little bit now. And I feel like, look, they're not going to get perfect reps every play from Illuminor and Hubbard. I think we know that. But man, the interior offensive line has taken a huge step forward. And just overall, the technique, the dealing with stunts, the ability to kind of I just play a better version, a better brand of pass protection than I'm used to seeing.
They seem to not be surprised as often as they used to be, right? Especially on the interior. And I got to give a lot of credit to John Michael Schmitz. Look, we've been a little bit critical of John Michael Schmitz this season. I felt like he played a very good game in pass protection and as a run blocker. I'm hoping that he can continue that upward trend, or at least build on this one very positive performance against Washington. So I wanted to give him some praise, and I think you're spot on with your analysis of the offensive line. Impressed by it, gave Daniel Jones enough time. Look, you ran the football a lot. You were able to own the line of scrimmage running the football. You were able to move the football. And then when you did pass, it also allowed Daniel Jones, when you did pass, you were able to keep Daniel Jones upright, and it wasn't like Jones was just getting his ass kicked back there. Possibly the rushing attack and the play action passing attack also assisted that. So that goes to play calling and coaching and all of those other things as well. And then we're certainly, again, I don't want to make it like Dan and I are sitting here praising Brian Daboll. That's not necessarily what we are doing, but running the football as effectively as they did, you saw in the second half how the Giants were able to work the play action passing attack. And those linebackers were completely out of place. A lot of the times they were playing the run significantly. And the Giants did a good job in the second half designing fake boundary tosses after showing a boundary crack toss initially, and then opening up the middle of the field for Malik Nabers wide open, right? So the Giants incorporated those motions, the orbit motion, all those kinds of things pre-snap earlier in the game, and then they used it to their advantage in the second half to move the football through the air and allow Daniel Jones to get comfortable. So I think from an offensive game plan standpoint, the Giants were on point. They had a solid game plan and they executed it well, just not well enough. And again, there was no complimentary football, like we said on the last podcast, the quick reaction podcast. The defense really dropped the ball in this one, and we'll get into that on the next episode.
Yeah, and that's a great point by you. And I think ultimately, maybe, some of the listeners and we even mentioned it at the time, Nick, we're right when we were questioning like the Bengals game plan, for example. And I said, look, it's hard to run into fronts when the defense is playing that close to the line of scrimmage. I still do. And same with the Eagles game, right? Like we're seeing very different looks from the Washington Commanders than we saw from those defensive coordinators. And that makes it a little less inviting to run the ball. But with that said, Nick, I still think the Giants from this point on for the rest of this 2024 season have to stay committed to the run early in games, regardless of how it looks, regardless of what the defense is showing. Some days may be better than others, but I do think it presents them an opportunity for cleaner pass protection and for more opportunities to actually hit those plays in the pass game. And I think it's just proven by these last few games by looking at some of the other games where they failed on offense versus something like this one. Now, the defense is different. Obviously, the Eagles are a better defense than Washington, like things like that. But look, they found some success by going back to this more balanced approach. I know it's not exactly what Daboll wants to run, but let's be frank, Daboll doesn't have Josh Allen anymore. He can't just run the offense he wants to run. He has to run the offense that he has. And in general, I do believe in the balance because it allows for things like you mentioned, Nick, a few minutes ago, which is that play where they're fake the toss crack and they're able to spring that huge play to Darius Slayton where he's wide open over the middle, getting them first and goal, and then a touchdown run from Daniel Jones the very next play. Those things are an example of marrying the pass game with the run game. Something we've talked about forever. Sean McVay, what makes him special? It's that exact thing. Kyle Shanahan, very similar thing. So Dable needs to find his version of that, I think, and he did a better job of that in the second half.
And I felt like, too, it wasn't just duo and zone read, which the Giants have run a lot this year. It was also, I think, 3 separate GT counter runs. You're in shotgun, you run GT counter, you're pulling the backside guard, you're pulling the backside tackle. That's something they ran a lot in 2022 successfully. You're going to have Theo Johnson. They ran a split back with Theo Johnson in the backfield, and he was going to take the unblocked defender from the backside. And they were able to move the football solidly, running it like that, keeping Washington on point. Washington, they want to condense their formation up front on defense. You could wash them down the line of scrimmage and then create those extra gaps over to run the football effectively and keep them on their toes. And the Giants also, man, with Daniel Jones and the zone read, Washington had to respect it because they got beat early on that second drive, a 24-yard run by Daniel Jones. And it could have been even more, right? It was a nice timely play call. And if you watch the defense, you could see the Giants were really dialed in on Jaden. Like their entire game plan on defense, and we'll get into this on the next podcast, was, hey, we're going to rush the passer, but we are not getting out of our rush lanes at all. People are like, oh, well, the Giants can't rush the passer anymore. It's like, I understand why people are saying that, but it was a lot more game plan specific. And it was also every single pass play, it seemed like there were 2 guys chipping Ojulari and Burns. Very difficult for a pass rush to have success with that. And you're going up against Jaden Daniels, who can make you pay if you are even a little bit, if you take a little bit of liberty in your pass rush lane.
Yeah, I mean, there's a play we'll talk about later on that pod where Giants call blitz. It's Drew Phillips, and Jaden Daniels just like in the smoothest criminal fashion sidesteps it and then just runs up the lane that was vacated. I think it's really a damned if you do, damned. We'll talk about that more in the next pod, but I think this is going to be one of the toughest quarterbacks to game plan against for the Giants for the foreseeable future. If this guy can stay healthy, we're looking at 10 to 15 years of really difficult game plans for any defensive coordinator the Giants have, unless they build their defense to an elite level. And that's just the nightmare that it is going to be playing a player like this. He's very hard to scheme against. And I think we saw that in this game, but we'll talk more about that after, Nick. Back to the offensive side of the ball for the New York Giants here. There was a point I wanted to make off one more last point about the pass protection, giving the Giants opportunities again, hitting some of these intermediate shots, these vertical shots, some really clean pockets, and some really easy, just quick wins, right? Balls out sometimes in 2.5 seconds or under. But you look at the offensive line, the pass protection, and some of the clips we ran, and everyone's kind of doing their job on a lot of these clips. Obviously, I recognize the exception of some of those Hubbard and Illuminor snaps, but coming into this game, Nick, the Washington Commanders, almost called them the Redskins again, had the 6th best pass rush win rate. And what that does is try to measure if you win in under 2.5 seconds as a pass rusher in one-on-one situations. And that's something that they failed to do, I thought, a lot in this game. I thought the Giants won that battle against what was deemed to be a very good pass rush coming into the game. So, again, I remain very impressed with the work that Carmen Brasilla has done. I know Bobby Johnson's found his success too on the Commanders, which is a whole nother story that we don't have to unpack today because it's just, I don't even want to get into that. Like why?
No, we can even touch on that. I don't mind touching on that. It's not that complicated, ladies and gentlemen. It's not like Bobby Johnson left the Giants. He was like, hey, I know how to coach now. Bobby Johnson has this guy who's playing quarterback for him that makes his offensive line's life so much easier. Not that complex.
In addition to that, though, it is so true. Like Jaden Daniels changes so much more than some fans realize. It's not just like how hard it is to scheme against him. It's how much he makes your offensive line look better. It's everything. Like Nick just said, the Giants have to respect. They can't rush him in the way they can rush these other quarterbacks because they don't want to give up the lane. And how does that makes the offensive line look a lot better. I will say this though, Brandon Coleman, their 4th round pick. I saw a cut up of him today, and then I watched him, and obviously when we did the film, I was like, damn, this dude's playing good football for them. And 4th rounder, good location, good job by Adam Peters there. It's going to happen. But man, if they can, this is a scary team now for the Giants. We'll get to that on the next podcast, though, Nick. But yeah, just wanted to bring that up too. Anything else before we get into the play breakdowns offensively that stood out to you?
Yeah, another game of 75% 11 personnel. Another game of like 75% in shotgun. Just I would like to be a little bit more under center, but that's just not how the Giants are rolling it out this year.
Nope. It's a different offense with Kafka and Dable. Totally different, it feels like.
It is. I do. I think the Giants could run effective offense out of I formation. We saw it a little bit earlier in the season, but we have not seen it all that much. I also just like the tug of war battle between Dan Quinn and Brian Dable. You saw how it's like, oh, okay, you want to run a lot of middle of the field open. Well, when we start passing the football, we're going to just send Theo Johnson up the seam. How many times did you see Theo Johnson go up the seam? And they connected for the 35-yard touchdown in the second half, but there were like 2 or 3 other plays where Theo Johnson's up the seam, and that just forced the safety to be put in a spot where you have Malik Nabers out wide and then Theo Johnson up the seam. And it's a one-on-one, or it's a 2-versus-1 type of situation in a cover 2. A lot of those were cover 4, so you had that deep fourth defender defending and dropping back. But even on the Theo Johnson touchdown, which we'll get into here in a little bit, that was cover 4. And Brian Dable did a fantastic job using a 3-by, or I think it was an empty set, and then he used Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Nabers to run verticals 10-plus yards. Now, Nabers curled it up, but it's 10-plus yards. That occupied the deep fourth to the boundary, and then the deep fourth had to pay attention to Wan'Dale Robinson, so there was no deep fourth to pay attention to Theo Johnson except for the backside, the field side safety, who was a bit late, and that's why that was a touchdown. So that's a great play call and a great play design against a defense that was adjusting to more, or that was playing middle of the field open a lot throughout that game. And we also saw middle of the field, we also saw them transition a little bit, the Washington Commanders, to a middle of the field closed to account for the run after those first 2 drives and those first 3 drives. They started, cheating that safety down into the box a little bit more. And then at the snap, he was buzzing way down towards the box, and those linebackers started getting very aggressive. So from that standpoint, I did feel like Brian Dable did a solid job. It's just when you see, we're sitting here and this is the flip side of it, and it's a perfectly good argument. When you're praising the offense for having this type of game, the offense scored 7 points in the first half. But that's kind of the nature of this offense right now. Now, the defense did play a role in that, though, because the defense had 2 10-plus play drives in the second goal. Like the defense, or the offense had the ball for 1 drive in the second quarter, I think. Chris Mannert scored that touchdown in the beginning of the second quarter, and then they had a 3-and-out, and that was the only time the Giants offense touched the football because the Giants defense couldn't get off the damn field.
Yeah. So that plays a factor as well. And that's happened in previous games, flip side and vice versa. So I felt like, this was one of, on tape, at least to me, I thought Dable did a great job, and I thought Jones did a great job. This was one of the most in sync I've seen them. And then, we'll talk about it later with the Theo Johnson touchdown, one of the best plays I've seen from the Giants in the last 5-6 seasons, I think, Nick. Honestly, I think it's one of the best throws of Jones's career. I do believe that. It's a seam ball that goes for 40-plus and a touchdown. We never, or was it 38, whatever it was. We never get that. And he threw it with anticipation. We never get that. So, and ball placement was good. He changed the pace of the throw. I thought he put good velocity and touch on it. Great play by the Giants. But just another example, Nick, and I'll let you say something in a second, but just another example of why you got to run 4 verts more often, baby. Come on. This is Madden. It ain't Madden, but I want 4 verts. I love 4 verts. It gives the quarterback so many options. I feel like 4 verts puts so much stress on any defense. I don't know why coordinators don't run it more often.
They don't have the pass protection. The Giants were able to protect the passer in this game. And it also just puts it in the back of the defense's mind, like, hey, this is a possibility. If you run cover 3, we could flood the deep portions of the field. If we can protect, we can attack you. That's why we want to dictate to you and force you to play a little bit more cover 4. And they were in cover 4, and they still beat them for that deep touchdown up the seam, because that is a vulnerability of cover 4, even though there's 4 guys who are deep. I think there was one more thing I wanted to bring up.
I had a couple things, but I want to.
Yeah. You get into that, and then I'll
think about it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's fun. I love when we, I love when we lose our train of thought for a second, and then it just comes back randomly. It might have come to you. If it came to you just now, go for it.
Is that because you forgot and you want me to?
No. I got mine. I got mine.
No, you're good to go. I'm just going through. Dude, I have so many notes, and they're organized, but we tend to jump around a little bit, which isn't a problem.
Yes.
And I'm a catalyst to that as well. So sometimes I'm like, oh, what exactly did I want to follow the cover 4 point? But anyways, please take it, Dan.
So I had 2 points. One I want to close with because it's less focused around this game and it's focused on something I want to get into with you overall. But the first one is you broke down a play earlier on Twitter today, which was a great example of how the tension, something we brought up at the beginning of this pod, the attention the defense placed on Malik Nabers with an over-the-top safety created and allowed a different throwing lane. And I forgot who that was to. Then I broke down a play later in the game, and there were multiple of these where Theo Johnson had a catch because there was an area vacated by the attention that the Washington Commanders put on Malik Nabers. So this is a good example of something Nick and I discussed during the pre-draft period, and then right after the Giants drafted Malik Nabers. Having somebody like this will lead to some game plans and some situations for the Giants where they have free space and free plays and big chunk gains. Like the Theo one I broke down, I forget the one you broke down, but Theo one I broke down was later in the game. It was a 15-yard play for the Giants, or 14-yard play, because of the attention that Nabers commands. And while it might not lead to these 150-yard Nabers games like we were getting accustomed to at the beginning of the season, like he was at one point pacing for like an Odell Beckham-like rookie year, that's not the case anymore. It will lead to other creations in the offense. And that was just something I'm excited to see, because I think long-term, now looking at this season, and I like where the pass protection is headed, and I like where the spacing on the offense, I like how that looks as well.
And I think Dable, this is another point I wanted to make. I think Dable did a good job, or does a good job, understanding how to get Nabers open when he really needs Nabers to get open.
Mm-hmm.
Like on one of those first early passing successful plays, Malik Nabers, he motioned him from the far side over to the near side to a stack on Darius Slayton. And then Darius Slayton cleared out the middle of the field, stemming inward on a vertical, and Malik Nabers outward stemmed and then just ran about a 12-yard dig, and Jones found him for a nice gain. It might have been about 10 yards. But regardless, when you need Malik Nabers to just be a distraction, he puts him out there. And if you're flowing that safety, if you're cloud covering him, if you're putting a safety over top and a corner and you're putting 2v1 on Malik Nabers, Brian Daboll has plays in his arsenal to get to Wan'Dale Robinson, to get to Darius Slayton, and to get to Theo Johnson. And if Theo Johnson can come along a little bit, that could significantly help this offense. I think Theo Johnson is in over his head as a receiver right now. He doesn't look natural out there, but you can see the upside. I mean, the upside is very obvious when you see him go up there and he high points a football 35 yards downfield. I think he seems a little awkward, like a baby giraffe trying to find his legs when he's like jumping and trying to locate the football. But I'll say this about Theo, because we've been tough on Theo Johnson. I think it's rightful. I don't think he's had a great start to his career, but he's a rookie playing a very difficult position. He is damn physical as a blocker. Yeah. Like damn physical. And he plays well through the whistle. He's driving dudes out of bounds.
That's why he's playing so much. They see that on tape.
It is. And it's very noticeable. And it's something we've noticed. And I've seen a lot of, like, throughout the season, not necessarily in this game, I've seen a lot of mistakes by Theo Johnson as a blocker, him not taking the right guy, him stepping in the wrong direction, little things like that. I think that's starting to get cleared up a little bit. And now it's just the mistakes as a receiver and not catching the football and things of that nature. So if he can put it all together, I do think this could be a solid asset for this offense, just off the baseline of him being so damn big and physical in the trenches.
I think, to be quite clear, and then maybe I'm a homer on this or something, I don't know. I think he has the opportunity, based on the flashes we've seen as a receiver and blocker, because I'm just going off flashes, right? The upside ceiling, if he can find, because that's what it's a rookie, right? He's a young rookie. He didn't have many reps. So if you just assume that he will grow into, and if what he's flashed from an upside standpoint can become a consistent thing, I think he can be way more than a solid contributor, to be honest with you, Nick. Like what he flashed on, but not just that, I'll say the seam route touchdown, because that was amazing, right? Like he got open, he moved pretty well on that, and then he was able to use his catch radius to make a play. He did that on a few other plays as well. And you've talked about the blocking improvements. Once it starts to click, and we've always said this, like with rookies, it's all about the game slowing down for them, and then they can kind of have better awareness of where they need to be within their route for where the quarterback's expecting them to be to get the ball out. All that could click for him at some point. Maybe even this year. Doubtful this year, but maybe. Anyway, down the line, if it clicks for him, I think he can be a major asset for this offense. I really do believe that, based on the flashes of upside he's shown. Very impressed with him. I know he had the 3 drops, and I was hard on him after that 3rd drop on Twitter yesterday, because it was frustrating as a fan to watch. But again, just have to take, you have to see the forest through the trees with this one.
I agree. We got to be maybe a little bit more patient. And I just love how damn physical he is in the trend. You know me, man. I love those tight ends.
And he has the frame for it.
Yes.
That's the difference. He has the frame for it, which some other tight ends, not every tight end will have.
Yeah, no, 100% agreed. Chris Manhertz getting that touchdown too made me smile. I'm so glad that Chris Manhertz was the receiver who caught the Daniel Jones 672 day drought or whatever the hell it was, because he had it 2 weeks ago, and it got taken away from him. And Theo had it, and Theo decided to push off. And there was a bunch of plays that Daniel Jones did have it called back. I'm not saying that to make an excuse for Daniel Jones. I'm just stating a reality. I'm stating a fact, an objective fact. And then Chris Manhertz gets it. His first catch as a New York Giant, touchdown. Absolutely love that, because Chris Manhertz is a man. He puts the man in Manhertz, baby.
So two more quick things, and then we'll get into the play breakdowns. First, if you could run that the Nabers slot clip that I put in there. Yeah. So this is just a good example of something I'm hoping that we see in the second half of the season more. If you'll notice, lined up in the slot is number one, Malik Nabers. The Giants haven't used Malik Nabers often in the slot this season. It hasn't been as big of a part of the game plan as I hoped it would be. Watching his tape at LSU, where he destroyed defenders in the slot. Look here, he wins this route easy, early. One thing that you can do when you move Nabers into the slot here is you take away the ability for teams to play as much cloud coverage on the outside over the top. You give him some more free looks. You give him some two-way option on his routes. This is something the Giants need to do as the second half of the season rolls through. Something I'm going to be focused on, Nick, and it's something I want to see more often. Now, some might say, well, how do you do that with Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot? I say you give that rep to Jalen Hyatt. Or I say, if you don't like what you're seeing on tape from Hyatt, and Hyatt got a few reps in this game, you give that rep to somebody else on the roster at the wide receiver position. I don't know. But I don't think having Wan'Dale and the Robinson on the roster should be that precludes you from ever using Nabers in the slot or not often using Nabers in the slot. He's a weapon in the slot. Look how easily he gets open here. This could have been a big play. And these are not the first time we've seen this. We just need to see it more, in my opinion, in the second half.
Yeah, you can call an offense with Malik Nabers in the slot, and it doesn't always have to just be in a 3 wide receiver set. You could do it from empty, like the Giants are doing right now. And even if it is a 3 wide receiver set, give Jalen Hyatt a few more snaps. Wan'Dale can take a little bit of a breather. It's not phasing Wan'Dale out, but just have some plays that will force the defense to account for Malik Nabers in the slot when the defense gets comfortable accounting for him on the outside. Put that in the defense's court, right? Put that in their corner and have them deal with that. And if he's open like he is on this play, you can maybe attack it. And Jones doesn't attack it. I think this is just a predetermined read by Daniel Jones. If you like what you see, if Wan'Dale wins to the outside, just get the football. I think it's a 1st and 10. Get the football to Wan'Dale Robinson. Now he misses Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Nabers is open, but these predetermined reads are a big part of what Brian Daboll does offensively, right? It's like, hey, if you like this quarterback, take it. So it's easy to sit here and look at Malik Nabers. Oh, he's open. You should have thrown that. And, part of me wants to join you in saying that. But I also understand that with these, especially 5-man protections, just get the football out of your hands. Your predetermined read if he has leverage, if he is open. And Wan'Dale's slightly open here. I don't think he's completely open, but it's that hard inside step that he takes, gets out, and you could see that's a nice route by Wan'Dale Robinson through contact too. Like how he flattens at the top there and creates that extra separation and runs back towards the line of scrimmage. He is open and Jones just doesn't put it where it needs to be on that specific play. But you can see Nabers open, and I do. Yeah, that's also Wan'Dale Robinson's Tyrannosaurus Rex arms though too. It doesn't seem like it was that high, did it?
Yeah, it's hard to see from this angle, obviously, but I do agree the catch radius plays a role in that. And it's tough for a quarterback to change where he wants to throw this ball to each receiver, knowing it's such a difference between Wan'Dale and the rest of them. And I do agree with everything you said there, by the way. This is a big part of the Giants offense. A lot of it is just predetermined. Find your best thing pre-snap, put your eyes there and throw the ball there. We said a few weeks ago, I haven't checked the numbers, but Daniel Jones leads the NFL in first read target percentage of all quarterbacks. I think it was him and Trevor Lawrence. But what I'm hoping for is, if you use Nabers more in the slot, you can build that trust with Jones and Nabers to the point where Jones will be like, this is the best decision pre-snap. It may not look like it, but it is, because I can trust Nabers to win that. And I can trust that he's that good that I can just lock in pre-snap, get the ball out to him when he's in the slot, and he's going to make a play. And so I'm just hoping to see more of that as we go. Now, last thing before we get into play breakdowns, Nick, I wanted to touch on this. The Giants have named, not this one. Sorry. This is just an overarching concept. You can run that if you want to. Doesn't matter. The Giants have named Daniel Jones the starter for this week against Carolina. And I support that decision from Brian Daboll based on the game film from this week. And I think it's important to note that we've talked about this being a situation with the Giants under Brian Daboll where players are started and sat based on the merit of what they put on tape. And a lot of fans have gotten angry at us for saying, like, how can you say that about Golladay and all these other examples, but then they haven't benched Daniel Jones? Well, I'll say that because Daniel Jones hasn't deserved to be benched. I haven't seen Drew Lock. You haven't either, Nick. We don't know for sure. Same goes for DeVito, though. I mean, I'm not even willing to get into that right now because I thought DeVito regressed massively during the final stretch of snaps for him last year. And I do not think he'd do a good job in this offense.
You just hold a personal vendetta against DeVito because he played us out of
I like
getting Drake May.
No, I like DeVito as a person. Good for him. Like, but I think you could, I know you're joking, but like he really regressed at the end of his run with the Giants. His pocket management was beyond bad, and he got benched for bad play. But Jones has put on tape, and especially in this game, right? Like if it trended like it was, like the Eagles game and the Bengals game where Jones really didn't play good football and he had another game like that, then fine. You can say he deserves to be benched going into this. But right now, this is a meritocracy. Like Dable is playing Jones because Jones getting the ball out faster than he thinks Locke will. He's getting it out more on time. His ball placement was pretty damn good in this game, especially for him. It was amazing, but pretty damn good overall. I am skeptical that Drew Lock would have as good ball placement as Daniel Jones had on the throws from an accuracy standpoint in this game. I'm very skeptical Drew Lock would get the ball out on time as often as Jones did. And most importantly, Jones knows this offense so much better than Drew Lock knows this offense. He's had so many more reps in this offense. He's had 3 years in this offense. He's built rapport with Slayton that you can see on tape, right? The rapport with Nabers needs some work, and we've started to see signs of that. That will hopefully improve as the season goes. But the rapport with Wandale and Slayton, it's undeniable, and it's not something that Drew Lock's going to have or DeVito. So all of these factors are leading me to believe, and based on how good of a game Jones had on tape, and he did play well in the second half, he deserves to be the starter. Like it is a meritocracy. They're still playing the best player. And Dable is not thinking about the injury guarantee, even at 2-7, right? Like he can't think about that. He needs to think about, I've seen this happen with John Mara before, where he said, the coach is coming back, and things went so bad and they became such an embarrassment that he changed his mind. Because he's literally done that with 2 head coaches, John Mara. So it's not a guarantee that he's coming back. He needs to eke out some wins in his mind. And he's probably right that he needs to eke out some wins. If Giants go 2-15, Nick, I don't think Dable's coming back if they lose out the rest of the way, right? Even if they go like 3-14, I don't know if Dable's coming back.
That would mean that they would have been swept in the division.
Yeah.
Swept in the division.
And it's just, it would also mean they've lost like 12 games in a row to end the year. It's something insane like that, right? Like he's not going to keep his job if that happens. So he's not thinking about the injury guarantee. And look, you can see it. They're calling like first and goal from the 2. Jones slam your body and head first into 2 defenders, bounce off the tackle and score us a touchdown. Like they don't give a F about this injury guarantee, to be quite frank. And I don't think John Mara cares that much because he hasn't made anything, statement about it. He refuses to talk about it. Joe Shane won't talk about it. It's just kind of just let's hope it doesn't happen and screw the rest of our, screw us next year. So they can't think about that. They have to think about what helps them now. And Daniel Jones is their best option. I think that to me is obvious watching the tape. Now, again, I don't know what Drew Lock would look like in this offense. So it's still some speculation by me. But I just think that's where they're at, Nick. Do you have any feelings on that, on this decision to start him for Carolina?
For Carolina, no. I think he should be the starter for Carolina. I think if he sucks against Carolina and doesn't play that well, that's when you make that switch.
Okay.
Because again, the Giants are going to Munich. There's a lot of change right now. I think making a quarterback change after your quarterback played possibly his best game of the season wouldn't be wise.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I still think maybe Seattle was his best game, but this is definitely up there.
I agree, but it's in the conversation. He played well. One more stat too. And again, I think this stat is another reason why Daniel Jones played well. And it was all about the rushing attack, man. The Giants posted season highs in expected rushing yards with 151. The EPA per carry was plus 0.14, and the total yards before contact was 100 on designed runs. And additionally, ball carriers were contacted behind the line of scrimmage on a season low, just 14.8% of the design runs. Now, this is a credit to the fact that the offensive line played well, which they did, but also the fronts they were running into because there was a lot of too high. So just wanted to throw that out there. It kind of substantiates what we were talking about a little bit earlier in the podcast when we were discussing the success of the offensive line against Washington's defensive front. Jonathan Allen defensive front, or List defensive front, but still a solid defensive front. I thought like Johnny Newton was running around out there like a maniac. Fedarian Mathis is okay. And then you still have Deron Payne, who's an absolute beast.
Agreed entirely. All right, let's get into some play breakdowns.
I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. And you can have a similar experience. To get this new customer offer from Mint Mobile and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/BBB. That's mintmobile.com/BBB. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/BBB. That's 3 Bs. $45 payment upfront required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Hey, Giants fans, we've teamed up with Buck Foston to give away exclusive free apparel from hats to premium sweatshirts and hoodies. It's easy to enter. Just follow them on Instagram @_Buck Foston or sign up for their newsletter at buckfoston.com. Next, DM them our 20% discount code BLUE20 on Instagram or through their website's chatbot, and you're entered in the giveaway drawing. You can participate every week and boost your chances by tagging friends and liking posts. 3 winners are picked at random each week. It's simple, free, and a great way to score apparel from Buck Foston. You must reside in the United States to enter. Terms and conditions apply. And we are going to start, my friends, with a 3rd and 3. Quarter 1, 13:45 left. This is in the first quarter. This is the first pass of the game, a little play action slide. I'm wondering if it was an RPO because it doesn't look like, no, I think this was going to be a play action anyways. I'm trying to see if he's reading anybody, but regardless of the facts, play action slide, Theo Johnson catches it for like a 1-yard gain and the Giants end up punting the football. But I just wanted to throw this out there because it was the first pass of the game early in the game. And there's just a ton of attention on Malik Nabers. That tone was set very early. You can see Malik Nabers at the top of the screen. He has inside leverage over the top, outside leverage right on the hip, following in man coverage. No space for Malik Nabers.
And they were still in tune to the PA slide attempt. This is just something the Giants ran with success in 2022, and since defenses have adjusted to it and taken it away.
Yep, absolutely. And we're going to get into the 24-yard rush by Daniel Jones next for pistol zone read. First, we're going to watch the end zone. You're going to see this. Yeah, Jones is reading 54 and seeing what 54 is doing. This definitely looks like it's probably just play action, though, and not necessarily RPO. I mean, they are definitely taking play action or they're definitely taking pass blocking sets. They're not dictating at all. But as Giant fans know, if it is a RPO and you want to run block on an RPO, you could get in trouble if it is a pass. But yeah, so that ends up being nothing basically for the Giants to set up a 1st and 10 on the next drive. 24-yard rush by Daniel Jones, pistol, good read. Deron Payne gets sucked too far inside. Daniel Bellinger gets out to block that contained defender, and it's the secondary contained defender that has to chase down Jones down the field. Good gain for the Giants offense. Unfortunately, they fumble a few plays later.
Yeah, this was a good example of, I think, the fastest I've seen Daniel Jones look as a runner all year. I thought he looked much more spry and fast in this game, which is good for the Giants as they move forward.
Absolutely. And they run this towards, it's a 13 personnel, right? They run this towards a double Y set, and you bring Daniel Bellinger in motion from the backside. So you're running it towards the strength. There's going to be a few extra bodies over there, but everybody pinches. Everybody pinches up at the mesh point, and now you have Daniel Bellinger as a lead blocker. This is a way that Brian Daboll used Daniel Bellinger early in his career as his lead blocker on some of these zone read concepts. And he's fantastic because he can adjust on the fly and block while he's moving and locate his target. I think the Giants have a good tight end room right now. They lack that star power, which they had last year with Darren Waller. But all 3 of these tight ends, I trust.
I agree with that.
And Bellinger puts that guy on his ass. Jones picks up 24.
Though, now, to be clear, and I know you mean this, as far as all 3 you trust, maybe less so trust with Theo, but we are intrigued by the flashes of upside.
100%. You're going to take there's going to be some speed bumps. You're going to take your lumps with a rookie tight end who's a little bit raw, especially when he wasn't used like a lot of people felt like he should have been used at Penn State. He wasn't necessarily this featured receiver. That wasn't Penn State's offense. You see how nimble he is. You see the upside and the concentration and how he can bring in certain passes, but that's not consistent yet. But he's also a kid. He's also a rookie. Right. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. Here we just have a little 15-yard run by Devin Singletary, put on a nasty
really
move.
Nice run by Singletary here, I thought.
And look at the safeties, man. The safeties just bail. You have 2 safeties going deep. It's too high. Singletary hits that light box. Giants block well up front. And you have an RPO that's also going to hold that apex defender in place. To Wan'Dale Robinson, you could see Daniel Jones looking directly at that apex, that overhang defender, decides to hand the football off since he's outside of the hash. You have an even numbers in the box. Trust Devin Singletary, who ends up making that apex defender miss, who was in pursuit. It's a sick move by Devin Singletary. And sometimes I think we forget that he could do that, right?
He can do that. He was top 4 in a forced missed tackle rate, maybe 1 before his injury. He's quicker, I think, to some degree than Tracy, though I think Tracy is potentially a better runner. I think they're both assets and weapons. I think, in the NFL, there's a lot of talented running backs across the board, to be quite honest. I will say this, watching this play and some of the others in the first half, I do question, and obviously I'm not an NFL head coach. I would never claim to know more than them, but I do question Dan Quinn's game plan as I watch plays back like this, where the safeties are bailing. I don't really understand why against the Giants, given what they've put on tape this year, given the tape you watched the Eagles against them, the tape you watched the Bengals, why you'd ever have safeties bail like this against this offense. The Giants haven't done enough in the deep half. They haven't challenged enough in the vertical game to ever really call this, in my mind, at least. So that was a bit confusing to me just watching the first half. I didn't really understand some of these play calls. Like, to me, I would never, ever, if I was scouting to play the Giants, have safeties bailing like this to that kind of depth against this kind of offense. There's really no reason in my mind to do it.
Yeah, and it was just cover two. And if they wanted them to have that deep half, you align 5 defenders underneath in the middle hooks, which would have happened if the Giants threw the football. And then, look, you have a 2-eye shade and then a 3 tech. But the over fronts that Washington would employ, and an over front is when the 3 technique is to the strong side of the offensive formation. They were slightly over, right? Like the 3 technique and the 1 technique in an over front were very close to just being two techniques on a lot of these plays from Washington, which allowed John Michael Schmitz to have an easy climb up to the second level frequently and often. And I'm guessing Dan Quinn was attempting to build out some sort of wall, wasn't too worried about John Michael Schmitz getting up to that second level to locate these linebackers. He trusted his linebackers to evade John Michael Schmitz. Bobby Wagner is a vet. He's very good at evading, even though he's a little bit older and a little bit longer in the tooth. But this also allowed just having the presence of these 2 defensive linemen teetering on the A gap, also kind of have the B gap that's close. You can align your edge rushers a little bit wider. And if you look throughout the game, Jermaine Illuminor and Chris Hubbard both got beat a decent amount up the arc. So I think maybe from a front standpoint, that was one reason why they wanted to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's correct. And I understand that. And again, like you described, like this is, they're playing cover 2. They're bailing these safeties to massive depth here. It makes sense in the new age NFL and to prevent big passing plays, but the Giants aren't the team to run this against. I would question it if I was a Commanders fan. I would never call this play personally against the Giants. If I get beat over the top by the Giants, it's a rarity. I don't need to worry about it. I'm okay getting beat over the top by the Giants. I would rather do what the Eagles and the Bengals did against the Giants. Just make sure there's not a single opportunity really in the run game or the short passing game. That's just my opinion on it.
And another reason for the 2 tech, we talk a lot about how the Giants love to form those double teams in duo. Giants didn't run as much duo in this game, and it could be because of this front, because it's more difficult to form a duo when you have a defensive lineman directly over the top of a guard. You need that tackle or that center to step all the way play side, which requires them to stay square and then climb up to the second level. And by that time, those linebackers may have already made their move to execute a tackle at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, whatever. But the Giants, I felt like when they did want to establish those double teams, it wasn't necessarily we're going to establish it and drive and vertically displace. It was more, I'm going to shove or at least help my adjacent offensive lineman, my teammate, get control of this defender while staying square and then climb and locate. So another reason why I want to praise the Giants offensive line is I felt like they did a very good job blocking these 2 techs and these 4 techniques. When it was a little bit different than it being a 1 tech and a 3 tech. And I know it seems like meaningless and it's very trivial, but it really isn't, because that's a whole nother step or a whole nother extra step that those offensive linemen are going to need to take. And that could throw you off completely. So kudos to the Giants for being able to stay square and still locate that second level responsibility, allowing Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy Jr. to do their thing.
Yep. Well said.
All right. Now we're going to get into the screen fumble. All right. So you see, man, Washington is pinched up close next to the line of scrimmage. The Giants have a heavy formation, 12 personnel, double Y to the field. And the Giants are going to run a little play action. It's going to be a screen. And everything would have worked out well, I think, man, if Dante Fowler Jr. didn't just abuse Chris Hubbard up the arc. And that's exactly
a huge play.
Huge play. And the ball gets kicked around, and it's just gross looking. And look, man, all these guys that they act, oh no, it's play action, let's drop back. And you can see there's like 3 linemen out there, and it's a clear fumble and almost intercepted. Big lineman kicks it. kudos to Devin Singletary for running after it. He didn't pick it up, but he's the only Giant who's trying to make a play on the football.
Yeah, I blame the refs a little bit for that. They blew the
whistle. It was
whistle.
awkward. It was awkward. At this point, though, man, if you're in the NFL, any situation like this, I'm running after the football.
Right.
I'm never even going to leave it up to these referees, bro. But that's such a clean beat by Hubbard. Hubbard tried doing that. I'm just going to throw you like away from the screen, which we've seen Andrew Thomas and Jermaine Illuminor do, and he just doesn't take a deepen. He doesn't gain enough depth to soften or to make that corner a more difficult turn for Dante Fowler Jr. And
I think reps like this is what I was referencing before. They get cycled around Twitter and whatnot. And it's like, oh my God, the Giants are so bad in pass pro. And it's like you watch the whole game and you're like, no, actually, there's more clips of them actually doing their job in pass protection in this game, which is what allowed those opportunities in the second half.
I agree, man. I agree. This is another good play call. We talked about the
great play call,
the fake crack toss. I love this, man. Just a little handoff underneath to Darius Slayton. You see how the linebackers react to Devin Singletary, and Daniel Jones does a good job faking it.
I was going to say, one thing I always want to give credit to for Jones, I think he's done a good job of his entire career, is the play action fakes and the ball fakes and how he does. I think really he's tuned into the details on plays like this. We've seen it with the Statue of Liberty. We saw it with a few more things in 2022 than recently, but it's one of his best attributes, how he can sell these plays.
And here we see a more, and I know it starts a little late, but this is an over front where it is a 3 technique and a 1 technique. And you could see how Runyon and John Michael Schmitz block down on that one. Runyon doesn't really even need to do all that much because John Michael Schmitz handles it. And now you have Chris Hubbard and John Runyon towards the side of, towards the weak side, which is the play side where Darius Slayton is running with Jermaine Illuminor, almost like a dart type of play, with Jermaine Illuminor pulling to the front side to kick out the end man on the line of scrimmage who was initially unblocked. And look at that hole, man. That's a beautifully designed play, and Washington did not expect. That's a gigantic hole, and Wandale is the one player out there who has to block this overhang, which I think was Jeremy Chin. Which, I mean, I don't know if you guys know Jeremy Chin, but Wandale Robinson blocking Jeremy Chin is not something that's going to work all that well. And it still was an excellent game, though.
Yep.
It's 11 yards on that one, and now we have the Chris Manhertz touchdown. That's a beautiful pass by Daniel Jones, man. First and goal. Quarter 2, 12:25 left. Bring in the big beef. You got Evan Neal in there. You know it's a crazy play when 73 brings his ass out there because he's not out there often. And that's a high point football. You allow your former basketball playing, rebounding tight end to just climb the ladder, make the catch. Beautiful play by Chris Manhertz. Beautiful pass by Daniel Jones. Touchdown Giants.
Yep. Well executed.
Yeah. Right there. I absolutely love to see it. Wish we saw it more. Now we're going to see it from this angle. I think the camera guy kind of gets fooled here. Yeah,
yep.
He does. Come on, all 22. What are we doing here? All right. We're into the second half, ladies and gentlemen. Quarter 3, 11:30, 1st and 10. This is what I referenced a little bit earlier in the show. Look, you want to get Malik Nabers involved? Yeah, he hasn't really he didn't really do much in the first half. So you're going to motion him from the tight end side, from the field. Well, it's not the field side because the ball is in the middle of the field, but you motion him behind Darius Slayton. Stack. You have Darius Slayton clear out, and now you have Malik Nabers matched up against Benjamin St. Juste, a good cornerback, but he is off and to the outside. So you just run right underneath where Darius Slayton just vacated. Dagger concept, something the Giants run all the time. Only the vert is a little bit inward leaning, and Daniel Jones delivers a football for a nice little gain to Malik Nabers.
Another example of a great pocket presented by the Giants pass protection here.
Yeah, and look at Theo John. These are the types of plays I'm talking about with Theo. Theo just puts Dante Fowler on his ass.
Yeah.
With Chris.
He's been really good in pass pro, I feel like, for what I expected out of a rookie.
Now, for those listening, it's Chris Manhertz is engaged in the block, so it's not like Dante Fowler's by himself, but just cleaning this up and bringing a tone setting type of approach as a tight end is something that Dan and I were clamoring for years, man. We were clamoring for this type of play from a tight end for years. And now we have 3 guys who can deliver something similar to that.
Really, any of the 3 can help the Giants like that in pass pro.
All right, now this play we almost ran before. Now I like that Daniel Jones found a solution, but it does seem like Malik Nabers is wide open on this play action under center 15-yard shot to Darius Slayton on a comeback. And I'm wondering if Daniel Jones got nervous because initially it's a too high defense, but you can see towards the Malik Nabers side, there's safety who looks like he could buzz down. And then right at the snap, off the play action, Jones hits his back foot. That safety's buzzed down, but it does seem like there's just so much room to deliver this football to Malik Nabers. And for whatever reason, Daniel Jones does not trust it. And he understood that he had a one-on-one matchup to the outside and found Darius Slayton. And that's all well and good, but, I'm not going to say here and knock Daniel Jones, but if you do look at it, it's like you could easily get the football to Malik Nabers here, and you have him in a lot of space to run.
Oh, yeah, there's two ways to look at this. The reality of the situation is if you put that ball in front of Malik Nabers on time and lead him so he can hands catch it, it's a touchdown. I've seen Malik Nabers, and if you disagree with that, you didn't watch the LSU tape, because I saw Malik Nabers score touchdowns with far less space to work with after the catch. So ultimately, the Giants find a solution anyway with Darius Slayton, and they end up kicking a field goal, though. So it takes 4 points off the board. If you believe and agree that Malik Nabers would have scored a touchdown here. I don't really care what you say. You can have your own opinion. My opinion is he scored touchdowns with far less space to work with, a good ball ahead of him. Now, the reason why he might have not made this throw, because I put this on Twitter, Nick, is that I think it's possible that, because the weird part about this to me is that it looks like he looks Nabers' way.
Yeah,
that's the part that's weird to me. But I don't know if he's actually looking Nabers' way as much as he's looking there toward the right to confirm the coverage and then know that he has Slayton with what he wants out of Slayton there.
Or
so
to get
that's where the disconnect comes. I'm sorry.
Or to get that safety to move
right
towards Nabers. Like that's
exactly.
influencing that safety off the spot.
That middle of the field. Yes. Okay.
And
yes.
And he trusts that, because right at the snap, you can even tell right here, this is going to be press bail, right? He's in a press alignment. He's not going to press, but he is going to bail. So he's bailing. And if you're running this comeback route, which Slayton runs a phenomenal comeback route.
Yes.
You can see he sinks his hips. He's kind of weaving a little bit in his route just to get that covering defender a little bit indecisive. You can see he's a little tempo, sink your hips, turn right back around, sit.
Great route.
Safety is nowhere near him. But yeah, you can see he's looking at Malik Nabers' way. Malik Nabers is open.
Yeah, he looks there, and there's no reason to not go there with the ball. Other than that, you're never really looking at him, and it just looks like he's looking at him. And really, the reality is he's looking at the coverage there and at the Washington defenders to confirm what he has with Slayton, which is fine. And look, it was a solution. They got a first down, but Nabers scores a touchdown there with that kind of space. I'm just going to repeat it because it's true, because you can watch the LSU tape and you could see it for yourself.
I would say he more than likely does. I can't sit there and say that with Colin, because you have a safety back there. You have Benjamin.
I think he beats the safety, but yes.
I mean, yeah, he very well could. I mean, definitely, but I can't.
It's not a guarantee. There's no guarantee, and it's
not with St. Juice there too, because then you're relying on Slayton, who could do this because he's a good blocker, to block St. Juice in space. But St. Juice is no slouch. He's a big dude too for a corner.
I think he probably catches, darts it to about the 7, jukes at the 7, and then houses it.
That's what
I mean. It's just what we saw on LSU tape, but we haven't seen it much in the NFL. Obviously, their rapport isn't that great, if we're going to be honest right now, Nabers and Jones, and that's something they're going to continue to work on through the year. His rapport with Slayton is amazing, so he trusts Slayton to win that route, like you said, because Slayton's put it on tape a lot, and he gets the ball out on time here. So it's not really a knock on Jones at all. So I hope people aren't interpreting it as that, but it's definitely an opportunity that might have been missed.
And also, look at these linebackers. Everyone's just filling. Oh, shit, it's passed. Yeah. Never mind. Theo Johnson puts his guy on his butt.
Second half, Nick. We saw a lot of those, them sucking up the linebackers based on them being more balanced in the first half of the run.
Sucking up the linebackers. Let's go. Now, here is the Wan'Dale Robinson pick play. Darius Slayton pick play. Wan'Dale Robinson touchdown that gets nullified, gets negated. You use Malik Nabers as a decoy, motion him in front of Daniel Jones, and then you just roll out, eliminate half the field, and you allow Wan'Dale Robinson to come open underneath the release of Darius Slayton. Now, I understand why Giant fans are pissed about this, right? But at the same time, I think Darius Slayton could just turn around and
sell this better.
You know what I mean? Like,
on him, in my opinion, just based on the NFL. And I understand why Giants fans are pissed anyway, but just don't stop your route. Just sell your route. At least like do something fake, like throw your hands up like you're looking for the ball. Anything to just pretend you're running this route. Because we know around the goal line, they're more likely to call these OPIs. I've been seeing them a lot more often this year. It seems like a point of emphasis for the NFL officiating. So, I'm okay with this being called back personally. And I think Slayton needs to do a little bit of a better job selling it.
What pisses me off, though, is Washington had a defender to the outside that could have made a
Right.
play on this if they switched, and they didn't. So I've seen worse picks not get called, which
Sure.
makes me go, come on, man. Like, how do we always get called for this shit? But at the
I
same
think
time,
less of late, though. I think less of late this year in 2024.
I look at Slayton and I'm like, if Slayton just sold it better, then this doesn't get called. And that's
Yes.
how arbitrary some of this shit is, right? Like if you just like turn around and you just put your hands up, the ref will be like, oh, he's not a picker anymore. He's looking for the football. And it's like, that's so stupid. We all
It is
know
pretty
what he's
dumb.
doing.
It is
Like we
pretty
all
dumb
know
that
what
it comes down to that.
yeah,
It is pretty. I can't lie about that. But
that's
they're
exactly
trying.
what it is, but it is what it is at this point. And this ends up, removing 4 points from the Giants, and they had to settle for a
Yeah.
field goal that
Right.
hardly went through, by the way.
Yeah. But to be fair, I just want to make sure fans understand this and recognize this. That was 3 free points. It would have been 7 free points because the Giants did not convert the 4th and 1. And when you watch it back on the tape, it was obvious that Nabers did not get to the line that he needed
Not
to
even
cross.
close to
Not even really close. It's just a horrific spot by the official. We shouldn't be this went for us, this one, Nick, but God, nothing makes me more tilted than the fact that we don't have computers and AI or whatever you want to call it deciding spots. Like we have literally a game that could have been a game deciding mistake by the officials there to spot that ball as a first down. And it just goes through and it continues on. And that one helped us. So, like, obviously, I'm not complaining in this situation, but it could go against us just as easy.
Now I want to look at the coverage on Nabers.
Yes.
So this is the first play of the fourth quarter. It's a 3rd and 9. It's a conversion to Wan'Dale Robinson and through contact, mind you. But look at the top of the screen where Malik Nabers is. He has a defender, press alignment, taking significant inside leverage, forcing Nabers outside, and a safety over the top, aligned initially on the numbers, just flowing over the top of Malik Nabers. So it's like you're not throwing the football to Malik Nabers. And this opened up a lot of space for Wan'Dale Robinson as the number 2. You also have Darius Slayton, who's getting some attention from the boundary side safety a little bit against Benjamin St. Juste. But Giants end up converting Wan'Dale Robinson. Good job by Daniel Jones. It's just crazy to see how much the Washington Commanders were not going to allow Malik Nabers to beat them in certain situations.
Great example of what we were discussing before. And there's, I thought, an even greater example later in the game, or maybe, I think it was later in the game, maybe earlier in the game, it was later in the game, to Theo Johnson, where it was a similar type of thing, but you had that cloud coverage stacked over the top of Malik Nabers' the corner on that route from the safety. It was wild to watch. It was essentially just, we will not get beat by Nabers on this play, similar to this one. And that's great for the Giants because it opens up space and opportunities for other receivers. This is what we discussed. Like, why do we want to draft a player like this? Why do we value him so high to the point where we don't want to take a risk on a Penix or whatever, or a Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy? It's because of things like this. It's because of how he tilts coverages and what he opens up for other players, in addition to the plays he makes himself.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We have an under center play right here. 13:49 left in the fourth quarter, 2nd and 9. They're going to run play action, just 2 deep curls. And these are 2 fantastic curls by Malik Nabers and Darius Slayton. If you look at the top of the screen, you'll see Malik Nabers. This is a beautiful route by Malik Nabers. Explodes off the line of scrimmage, eats into the cushion of the DB, then works into his blind spot. You can see right there how he takes that stutter step, and then he goes outward just slightly to get into the blind spot of the cornerback and to force a little bit of panic, dictate to that cornerback, gets right up on the cornerback's toes and then sinks his hips and is wide open. Darius Slayton does something similar, only the defender at the bottom of the screen, I think, does a little bit of a better job with his positioning, but Slayton comes wide open as well against Benjamin. I think it's Benjamin St. Juste. It might be one of the other ones, but either way, the defender on Malik Nabers gets to the catch point. Malik Nabers goes to the football, attacks the football, and then brings it in. I think this throw was a little bit slow by Daniel Jones. You could see it from this angle right here, the end zone angle. It kind of lofts in there a little bit, but Nabers ends up getting it, and it becomes a first down.
Yeah, he makes a tough catch at the catch point, right? Like, those are strong hands. And roll back to that for a second. Again, want to make it clear. You could pause right here, a little bit further back if you got me. Yeah, that way. And stop right there. Yeah. So again, want to make it clear, this was the second best, if not the best game on tape by Daniel Jones. He played a great game this game. Still, one of my pet peeves with Jones is that he can't just establish spots in the pocket here. And like this hitch into the throw and into the pressure, it's just very unnecessary to me. I'd rather him Find that landmark that he was at where I paused it a few seconds ago and just rip from there. Like rip your throw from there. You don't need to be stepping in, hitching all the time and making these throws because that's sometimes what leads to the pressure. And that's sometimes what leads to, as we saw last week, him stepping into sacks. Sometimes he just has to trust his pocket more like the Staffords and those types of quarterbacks who just find their landmark and throw from that landmark. They don't always have to be hitching into it. So it's just a little pet peeve of mine. I want to point it out. It didn't hurt him on this play, but it did, lead to him stepping, his throw into pressure almost as he gets hit after making the throw.
Yeah, he does step into it a little bit. I think that's just his way of putting a little bit more sauce on it, a
Power
little
on
bit
it.
more
Yeah.
mustard, a little bit more. Ketchup doesn't work. I
Yeah.
feel like you can use condiments to suggest like, oh, this is sauce, giving it some spice. This is giving it a little bit more velocity, but you can't use ketchup. Ketchup is very filling and just I'm not sure.
Ketchup is the worst and most overrated condiment in the game. The only thing it's good on is potatoes.
Ketchup on potatoes, really?
No, potatoes, French fries.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess.
I guess
I
for
don't
you,
really.
this is all foreign concepts because you don't eat any of this shit. You don't put any of that into your body. Nobody treats his body like a temple more than Nick Flato. I saw him 2 nights ago for the first time in a while. Just couldn't believe it. Like I had worked my ass off this summer. And not really. I shouldn't say that. I didn't really work my ass off this summer to lose weight. I just ended up losing 9 pounds mostly due to walking. I didn't really change my diet whatsoever. Though I tried to be a little better with it, Nick. But then I see you and I'm like, all this progress I made was for nothing because how do I get into the shape of this guy? This guy treats his body like a freaking temple. It's unbelievable.
I could be so much better, man. I'm on the track every day.
That's the mindset you have. It's the grind set you have. Oh, ketchup on potatoes. You can't even process that because you haven't even eaten fried potatoes in so long. They don't even know what to put on fried potatoes.
Silly, man. It's silly. But I do appreciate it. And here is, Dan, 10-10 left, quarter 4, 2nd and 4. Love this play. You ran crack toss earlier to the boundary, so you showed it to Washington, and now you're going to run a fake crack toss to get Washington to expand, to establish width, and then you're going to have
the second level. I just need to say
it
first so people can watch it as you play. Look at the second level defenders get fully sucked up. This is the definition of marrying your pass game to your run game.
And I love the route concept too, because you have Theo Johnson coming in motion. He's going to run wide and then he's going to angle inward. He's going to become that number 1, that outside receiver. Darius Slayton is in a condensed set because it was that crack toss fake. And what does he do? He just runs right where the vacated linebackers were. And Washington went into a 2 high. Malik Nabers is getting the attention he's received all game. So you have that backside safety. Eyes go right inward on Malik Nabers at the top of the screen. And there's nothing but space for Darius Slayton. It's almost surprising that this wasn't a touchdown.
Yeah, I thought he was going to house it too. Look, this is as good of a play design as you can ask for from your play caller. If you want to knock Dable, I understand it, but he does such a good job on this play of creating just the easiest opportunity you can imagine for a quarterback.
100%, man. I think the ball was probably a tad late coming out of Daniel Jones's hand. He does the fake, hits the back
just get rid of it.
Yeah,
but this is kind of the thing with Daniel Jones. Like the decision is made early, Nick, but this is kind of what I talk about. Well, even once the decision's made, first of all, he burps the baby there, which he does all the time. That's never been coached out of him. But even once decisions make, the ball takes a long time to get there. I just think it has to do with that Cutcliffe over the top throw, how long his dropbacks take. Everything is just a little bit slower than some of the quarterbacks. And I think it's been a problem for the Giants timing wise.
Yeah, but looking at it right here, it's difficult to say how much more time could Daniel Jones rip this like almost right away. It's just the burping of the baby is the one thing where it's like that little millisecond might have allowed those safeties to get over there to tackle Darius Slayton because Slayton is wide open.
I don't think it's a decision thing, Nick. I thought I made that clear. I want to make that clear. It's not a decision issue for Jones. It's just the physical. I think it's the physical of how long.
I don't think, did I insinuate that it was a decision?
No. I want to make it clear to their listeners, not you.
Gotcha.
That I'm not nitpicking here. I'm not blaming him, but when you watch some of the quarterbacks that can really rip a football and then don't have that long of a delivery, the ball's just ripped right out. Like, right. It just gets on a line to Slayton as he hits the middle kind of hash right there, the hash that you see in front of you. And that's when he could house it potentially. And it's okay. This is just what Daniel Jones is. Like, we don't need to fool ourselves. We don't need to, it's not nitpicking. He's not a heavy arm talent quarterback. He has a long over the top delivery. These are just facts of the situation. Like, they aren't to be debated. They're not a knock on him. It's not nitpicking. It's who he is. And it's fine. He made the decision fast enough, but I agree with you. If the ball is lasered out there on a line and hits him on that hash and the ball can just get out quick without burping the baby and without that over the top, kind of maybe a sidearm rip, Nick, it's potentially a touchdown. That's possible.
But Jones ended up getting in a few plays later.
Yeah.
And I also like how the Giants disguised this not just through the halfback fake, but look at John Runyon. Backside guard's going to pull, and that's just going to remove that linebacker. I think that's Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner just
Yep.
follows Runyon. He's reading his run keys and he's reacting to his run keys, and it just put the entire Washington second level out of position.
Yeah, and it's still I don't want to nitpick. It's still a fine throw from Jones. He made the decision quick. Ball got out there as fast as it could, and we got down to the 2, and Jones slammed his body into 2 defenders to score the next touchdown. As we sit here as Giants fans looking forward to next season, praying he doesn't injure his neck for a third time. But that's the reality we live in right now.
Absolutely. Now there's 3:41 left, quarter 4, 1st and 10. This is just another good deep comeback to Malik Nabers. I think Jones does a really good job holding that safety, even though he doesn't really have to, but still just kind of putting it in the defense's mind. You don't know where I'm going with the football at this moment. You'll see that right here, and it's a good rip to Nabers. And I like how Jones aligns himself up and throws his football, and Nabers makes the
pocket
catch.
by the Giants pass protection. Another example of a good pocket by the Giants pass pro here.
Like he's looking at Theo Johnson. He's looking at the safeties. He's like, I have plenty of space with the one-on-one. They're not shading towards Malik Nabers on this play. So I have the one-on-one. I'm just going to rip it on the deep comeback to Nabers, and he does.
And a phenomenal catch by Malik Nabers. Phenomenal catch. Let's run that back real quick. That was such a good catch by Nabers.
I mean, yeah.
For those questioning, what'd you say?
He better be making catches like this.
I mean, this is a tough catch. He has to fully dive. Look at that. Look at that full jump.
No, I know. I'm not taking anything away from him, but he's a receiver drafted in the top 10 of an NFL draft. You come away with this when you're wide open and uncontested.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, to me, a phenomenal catch when you're just fully extending your body like that. But yeah, I agree with you. He got to make that catch, and he does.
We talked about this play design a little bit earlier. 2:54 left, 2nd and 10, 35-yard touchdown
season, baby,
from Daniel Jones. No, it's not empty. It's 3-by-1 with Theo Johnson as a tight end in a 2-point stance inside of the hash. So he's very, very tight. And you can see that this is going to be a cover 4 pre-snap. It looks very much like cover 4. Neither safety is cheating down. Doesn't look like it's going to be middle of the field close. You got middle of the field open. So what Brian Dable did is he is going to run 2 verticals outside of Theo Johnson. Now Malik Nabers curls up, but he's 10 yards. That's going to occupy and dictate that coverage. That coverage is going to have to respect Malik Nabers because he is beyond 10 yards. And then that safety next to him is going to have to account for Wan'Dale Robinson, who's also running beyond 10 yards. So there is no underneath defender here for that curl flat. So both of those deep 4th defenders have to account for the number 2 and the number 1 receiver towards Theo Johnson's side. So now it's incumbent on either the Mike to carry Theo Johnson, which it was not, I guess that was not in the play design, or that backside safety who is chilling between the 20-yard line and the hash, if you're watching on YouTube, to get over to Theo Johnson, and he's just late and doesn't recognize it. He's looking at Devin Singletary come out of the backfield, and Theo Johnson's wide open, just split both of the safeties.
Some things I love about this play, Nick. One, I love the pass protection for a 4 verts concept like this. To have a pocket like this to work with on a concept like this, really impressive. I love how quick Jones makes his decision. This is one of the best anticipatory throws I've seen in his entire career. Easily the best anticipatory throw of his season, without a doubt. He gets this ball out well before the receiver is open. That's what we want to see. If he could do this 5-6 times a game, man, we would be talking about one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL potentially, or at least in the top 10, top 5 discussion, and a clear-cut franchise quarterback to build around. I wish we could see it more. I also love the trajectory he puts on this pass. I like the ball placement from Jones. I like the velocity from Jones on this throw. I like a lot. This is an elite level throw from Daniel Jones, and I want to make sure that he's credited for that. And I just, it's great to see. I hope we can see more of it in the second half. And that's really all I got on that.
And from an X's and O's standpoint, Wan'Dale Robinson releases wide around the curl flat defender. And what that does is that angles the hips of that safety, that deep 4th safety over the top of Wan'Dale Robinson a little bit outside, taking Theo Johnson out of his peripheral vision. So I think that's deliberate as well. You could see Wan'Dale Robinson runs towards the numbers, runs wide around the curl flat, and then runs right into the eyesight of that safety. And Theo Johnson is right in the blind spot, and there's no way he could see it. And by the time the other safety sees it, it's too late.
And I want to credit Theo Johnson for how he moves on this play too, right? Like he eats up a lot of ground here. I think it's the long strides that he has as an athlete, but he eats up a good amount of ground here.
Yes, he absolutely does. He's big, he's long. It's a little awkward catching the
This is
football,
the
but
flash that yeah,
gets
it's
his
definitely still a little awkward catching the football. Those are things you gotta have to work on. But man, these are the types of big time flashes. You have somebody like this who can just be that seam bending beast, like that can just give you a play like this in a game that ultimately had a chance to give the Giants, if the Giants defense could have got a stop, which I didn't feel like they had any real chance to personally against Jaden Daniels if he ever needed it. And I was proven right, unfortunately, but it gives you a chance to win football games. If you can play complimentary football for once in your lives as a football team, something the Giants have failed to do in 2 of 9 games this year, or of 7
yeah,
of 9 games.
it's unfortunate. And when you have 3 defenders on 2
Yeah.
receivers, it also helps,
Oh yeah.
which
This
is
is a great
nice.
play. Great play call. Great throw by Jones. Great anticipation by Jones. Great pocket and great play by Theo Johnson. This is just everything you want to see for your football team, dude. Like,
Yeah.
why don't we get it more often? That's what we've been saying, man.
Execution, baby. I absolutely love to
Yeah.
see it. Now we didn't have the first 2-point conversion attempt, which was a better 2-point conversion
And
attempt
then this, yeah.
than this one. It wasn't. I mean, both of these 2-point conversion attempts were much better than whatever the Giants tried against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we could say that at least. It's just Washington did a very good job on that first 2-point conversion attempt, dropping a lot of people into coverage, and no one really gained any separation at all. And then we have this one. Look, I don't love this play call at all. Like this is, and at this point you had to go for 2 because you tried before and you missed, but there was really only one option, it seemed like, for Daniel Jones, and that was Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah.
And look at what Washington did. Washington understands when you come out in this type of formation, you have 2 guys outside the numbers, Jalen Hyatt and Malik Nabers, and then you have the tight end, the running back, and Wan'Dale Robinson. And what did Dan Quinn do? He understands the Giants offense. He understands Brian Dable in these tight quarters. We're going to bracket the number 2. We're going to bracket Wan'Dale Robinson. And that's exactly what they did. Had an inside out on Wan'Dale. Jones looks that way and is like, shit, I can't really throw it that way. And then you also have the defender covering Jalen Hyatt come off Jalen Hyatt. And now you have a 3-versus-1 on the number 1 read. So this is just a terrible play design, in my opinion. And Washington played it so fantastically. Like if I was a Washington fan, I'd be like, yo, this is a great play call by Dan Quinn. They just absolutely removed the number 1 option. They knew exactly what the Giants were going to run. And that Washington fan in my mind would be 100% correct. And what is Daniel Jones? Like Daniel Jones has no options here. This isn't really his fault. Like Daniel Jones' first read is removed. You don't have another read for him to even get to. This is just a terrible play call, in my opinion.
It is bad. And he didn't really have any option here other than to try to throw back left pylon to Hyatt. But at that point, the timing is dead. So it's like, that's why you don't run 2 fades with this. But it does feel like the Giants just predetermined we're going to get this ball to Wan'Dale. And the Redskins or the Commanders predetermined that we know they're going to try to get this ball to Wan'Dale.
Dude, look at this, man. And like, it's not like you can't blame Wan'Dale. Like it's just one of those things where it's like the Giants coaches got bested on this play call.
It's like in Stratomatic, and I'm going to bring up an example of a board game that Nick and I used to play a few times. I wish I had played more with Nick because I like to play that game against anyone. It's like when you completely sell out to stop the run with all the pieces on the board. You move all your linebackers into every gap, and then you also key the running back. And essentially what the offensive player has when they roll the dice is negative runs as options, fumbles, or 0-yard gains. And this was a pass play, but the Giants had nowhere to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely nowhere to go. But
and that works for the 2 total people listening who probably got that reference. Maybe if I'm lucky, 2 people got that reference.
If you're on YouTube and watching us on YouTube, or even if you're not, head to our YouTube, comment below if you've ever played Stratomatic, because it's a game that Dan and I have played maybe like 3 times in our life, but every time we played it, it was like a 5-hour event. Like we were just really all involved. And, dude, it was
Madden's one thing, but Stratomatic football, the board game, is easily, and I think you'd agree with this, by far the closest thing to what an actual football to being a coach and play caller in an actual football game. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I guess, but it's still
out in Madden. You can just take advantage of bullshit in Madden. But
I know what you're saying. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Like, you're moving the pieces on the board on defense to try to predict against what the offense is doing. You're predicting pass or run. You're blitzing. You're doing all sorts of things that like real coaches will have to choose from in an NFL game.
It's one of the more virgin activities I've ever partaken in, and I would do it
again. Well, I got to be honest. You're not the only one I played this game with, Nick, and you weren't the first one I played this game with either, my friend. My dad grew up playing this game, as did my best friend Gary. Yeah, as did my best friend Gary, and his dad grew up playing this game. So it's been something that was passed down to us, and we have the old version of the game. We bought one point in the most virgin move ever. We went online to Stratomatic.com. and we bought we were trying to buy new cards, and so I sent them like I have this email somewhere where I was like, I'm obsessed with your game. It's the greatest game ever. And we sent them like all this stuff like about how good their product was. And they just sent us like that season plus like an extra season's worth of cards with like, and each season they have updated stats and the players change. I don't want to get too much more into this, but those who know when it comes to Stratomatic football.
This is the third time I think in the history of the Big Blue Banter podcast that Dan and I have talked for more than a minute about Stratomatic.
Yeah, and I have to slow myself down because I would want to talk more. Let's instead get into some superlatives here, Nick. I want to go unheralded player with you first.
Yeah, unheralded player John Michael Schmitz. I talked about him at the top of the show. I don't think he's had a great second season. It looks, I wouldn't say bust. I wouldn't give that to him, but it definitely looks like a slightly disappointing pick, which is becoming a little bit too frequent. It's a little bit of a disappointing trend with Joe Shane, even though it's, a little young in his tenure here when it comes to evaluating some of his draft classes other than the 2022 draft class. But I thought John Michael Schmitz did really well as a run blocker and climbing up the second level, all that kind of stuff, and also as a pass blocker. So I wanted to give him his credit, and I'm hoping that this can be a sign of things to come.
Yeah, I mean, when you have good offensive tape, Nick, and just two quick things I wanted to bring up. I did like the Giants finally use some tempo in this game. I'm just looking through my notes now. I wanted to add that they finally used some tempo, which I thought was important. Some no huddle, some hurry up, and the play at 2nd and 1, 3:22 in the fourth quarter is that other example, if people want to look it up, of Nabers grabbing so much attention pre-snap and post-snap that it created that opportunity for, in that example, Theo Johnson. But for my unheralded players, Nick, I'm going with 3 guys this week because the tape was good enough to get 3 guys. 1, Theo Johnson. We've gone over why this entire podcast. 2, Greg Van Roten. Man, I thought Greg Van Roten looked good on tape when I'm evaluating offensive line. I thought arguably he was the best offensive lineman on the field for the Giants in this game. And he's old. I know he's probably not going to be here past this year. Maybe he is. I don't know. But I like him. I think he plays good football.
I don't think it's crazy to suggest that he would be.
That back?
Yeah, that he'd be back. Yeah. I mean, this is somebody
playing at a good level.
And he's from Long Island, so he wants to be in the New Jersey area. He has a young family as well, which he's openly talked about, and he said he wanted to play near his home. So it makes a lot of sense from that standpoint.
I think he's played better as of late. Okay, and then the last one's Devin Singletary. You went over a couple. I just felt like he did really well with his touches. Singletary, that's an unheralded player for me. Best throw, I think we went over it. It's obvious. There's no other one that could even be debated. It's one of the best throws of Jones's career. It's the Theo Johnson seam.
I think there are some other ones that might be able to be debated, but Theo Johnson
over that one.
I mean, I just when you frame it that way, and I don't think you intended for this, it suggests just because in previous games that Daniel Jones hasn't really had many throws that we could even praise. I think he had a couple on this game where it's like, that's a really good throw. That's
I didn't mean it like that.
And I know you didn't mean it like that, but I just wanted to clarify. But yes, I think the best one would have to be the Theo Johnson scene.
Yeah,
not just for the anticipatory aspect of it too, exactly. And the recognizing. And I think Dable did a great job designing that play and understanding that if they go into this coverage, they're going to cover it this way. So we have to have Nabers and Wandale run 10+ yards. It's exactly like, that's such a good feeling as a coach when you put it out there and the coverage matches exactly what you thought, and then your players are able to execute and it leads to 7 points. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So that leads me to the next one. Best player overall.
Yeah, Daniel Jones for me. I thought Daniel Jones had one of his best games of this season, probably the Seattle game a little bit more, but still, this was a good game by him.
Yeah, second best game of the season for me, and I thought he was the best game player on tape. The other player that was in contention for me was Tyrone Tracy, but he didn't have a big second half as the Giants went away from that. I thought outside of Jones and Tracy, I mean, unless you want to give it to a lineman, you could say Nabers had a good game with the opportunities he had. We talked about that catch he made earlier. I thought that was a phenomenal catch personally. It was a little bit to his left, but overall, it's not like he made any explosive plays in this game that changed the game. Daniel Jones made some plays that changed the game, specifically that Theo Johnson play. It was a game-changing type play in a different scenario. When the defense can actually stop Jaden Daniels, it would have been a game-changing play we might have been talking about today. So Daniel Jones is my best player overall as well. Player you expected to see more from, Nick.
Jermaine Illuminor. I'm a big fan of Jermaine Illuminor. I just felt like he got beat high side too many times in this game, and he was probably the worst lineman of the bunch, not named Chris Hubbard. So that's where I went.
I think that's fair. I went with a player that you might feel is a little unfair, but it's just getting to that point with me. It's Wandale Robinson.
Oh, I knew you were going there.
Oh, did you know me too well if you knew I was going to
it was the only reason why is because the way you framed it. Again, I was like, oh, this is going to be a player who disappointed in this game. Who else could have disappointed that Dan was originally high on? So it has to be Wandale. But like, I want to know your reasoning why, because he didn't seem that involved in this game
That's
plan.
exactly it. It's not of any fault to
Gotcha.
Wandale in this specific games or overall. It's the way they're using him, man. It's the way he's used in this offense. I just don't think this is the best way to use Wandale Robinson. I think back to last year when he ran that game-winning route against the Packers with Tommy DeVito, just things like that. Like there are different ways to use him in an intermediate area of the field that I think would be more beneficial to him. I just don't love this role for him, and it's become a little bit of a disappointment to me because I don't think it allows him to shine. I even think back to that Kentucky tape. He was used on slot verts too, dude. He won on the vertical plane as well. You just never get to see that at all from him. And if this is our only slot for the most part, and yes, we saw a couple more Nabers reps, but we haven't seen a lot. It's mostly been Nabers on the outside. If it's our only slot, I think it limits us if we don't have a verticality to the game, to the slot, to our slot receiver. And that's kind of why I want Nabers getting more of these reps.
I 100% agree with that take. And it's not an indictment or a referendum on Wandale Robinson at all. But I also question, though, dude, if Wandale Robinson can be a consistent deep threat, because you need to be precise as a quarterback.
So precise.
And Daniel Jones is not precise as a quarterback. And I also just look at even if Patrick Mahomes was Wandale Robinson, like, is he the best option deep when it has to be like pinpoint accuracy every time? Because he has love Wandale Robinson, 0 percentile arm length, 0 percentile wingspan. Like you have to be so spot on with your accuracy, and he can't like climb any ladder or make any catches. It's very tough for a quarterback to get a football to a player like that deep down the field, especially if they lack anticipatory skills.
Agreed. And you need to have anticipation, and you need to have pinpoint precision with your ball placement. And maybe that's just why they phased him out of that, because we saw that opportunity against the Bengals, Nick, where he ran that more vertically oriented route, and the ball placement was just not near him, and they haven't really given him that opportunity since, at least from what I've seen. So just something to keep an eye on. It's just where we're at with that. Okay, pass blocking 1 to 10. I'm curious to get your take on this one, because I mean, I probably led it already with the show, but I wonder where you're at.
I put a nice 7.4.
Okay.
Probably could even be higher. The only reason is, and it's kind of dumb because it was a play where it's not necessarily on the pass protection, but the screen, you have a fumble. That's a huge moment in the game. That's on Chris Hubbard. I felt like Jermaine Olumunor didn't play that well. So I went with 7.4, but I could certainly be talked into giving a higher grade because I think it was a lot better than the perception.
So much better than perception. I had 7.9. There were, again, a few bad plays that got cycled over Twitter, and everybody uses the really bad to kind of go overall. But when you watch the tape, you can see it. And we just showed a ton of the plays on tape, and those weren't the only ones. A lot of really good pockets to throw from in this game for the Giants. So run blocking 1 through 10.
Run blocking. So I always struggle, Dan, because look, the too high shell, the having one less defender in the box allows you to run the football effectively. And I'm like, well, how do I grade that exactly? But then I'm like, you know what? You're just thinking way too much about this. The offense owned the line of scrimmage. They averaged 5.3 yards per carry. They rushed for over 160 yards. Their game plan and in the first quarter was run the football, and they were able to move the football and dictate to Washington. So I had to go with a strong 7-1 off of that. But I do think a lot of that success was predicated on what Washington's defense was doing. But at the same time, as we said, I thought the technique and the fundamentals were also good by the Giants against those lighter boxes.
And I think that's the key, because we have seen plenty of times in the NFL, teams face a similar game plan to what the Giants faced with those light boxes in the first half, which, again, I stand by it. I think it was a terrible decision by Dan Quinn, and I don't understand why you would ever come to that, given what the Giants have put on tape in the deep passing game, which is non-existent, and they don't challenge those areas. They don't really even throw like intermediate shots often, the Giants offense. Even in this game, they didn't have that many until they got those plays where Nabers were getting attention. They hit, the seam or the shot to the out route to Theo. But point being, despite that, we've seen teams struggle to run into too high shells. Like, it's not, they wouldn't be the first team if the Giants weren't able to. So the Giants were still able to, like you said, win with technique and beat what the defense was giving them. So I went with 7-3 here because I felt like they did a great job up front. Overall, I thought this was a good game from the Giants offensive line, save for a few plays.
Absolutely love it, man. This was much more fun watching this tape than I think I anticipated. Yeah, I know the second half was, but I was like, yeah, Giants offense played relatively well for all things considered, of course.
Yeah, and I just hope it carries over. I do have concerns. It will definitely carry over to Carolina. It's going to be a fun tape for us to watch. Carolina defense is beyond the worst in the NFL. I don't think there's a single defense that's been anywhere close to as bad as them. But I worry about the teams who are going to play the Giants a little differently and not play safeties so far off the line of scrimmage and play with so much soft coverage, because I just don't know how the Giants can attack those types of defenses. And we've just seen it too much over the last 6 years. There's just no real solution that the Giants have had, and it's been dating back for a while. So I hope that's not the case, Nick. I hope teams play like this a lot, too high, leave those safeties up, play us top down. Don't let us beat you over the top, because we're not going to beat you anyway over the top very often. So F it. Let's run the ball. But thank you to everybody tuning into the Big Blue Banter podcast. Hopefully there were some really good takeaways in this and things that you can take moving forward about this team. Theo Johnson, the offensive line, things like that. We will be back right after this for those listening with the defensive podcast. Now, a few things I wanted to touch on. One that I forgot, please hit the like and subscribe button if you're listening and you haven't already. We need your help. We need you to like. We need you to comment. Bring it up every podcast is important. Now, another person mentioned this to me, or a few people mentioned this multiple times. Do you think we should give it a shot staggering the podcast and dropping the offensive and defensive film reviews maybe like 24 hours apart? It's something that Nick and I we'll discuss at some point and maybe go that route. It could help us on YouTube from an algorithm standpoint. I'm not sure. I really don't know what goes into that. We haven't thought that played any role to this point, but I do appreciate your suggestion. And thank you for liking the video and subscribing and doing all the things that can help boost it, which is, again, like and comment. And that's all we'll ever ask. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.